I'll probably say a little bit of something about that at some point.
Okay. Because we are remembering.
We remember. Of course, we are now live on Facebook, and to all of our listeners over at Mile High Radio, tune in. You see, where else are we listening to? Apple Podcasts. Let me see. Pippa, can you help me out?
Stitcher.
Oh yeah, Stitcher. Yeah, and
Tune in.
I think definitely. So yeah, to all of you who listen to the show on the mobile platforms or are watching right now, thank you everybody for showing up. This is the part of the show where we really don't have anything planned because, well, nobody's watching. And there it was. There's my first laugh out of me today. Thank you very much.
Oh God.
Good show.
That's good.
What are you doing today?
Doing good. Running around like a mad woman, trying to get everything ready before I go in for surgery tomorrow, which is like a vacation, actually. I'm kind of looking forward to it, having someone cook food and bring it to me, and no cats bugging me to let them in and out. And yeah, it's kind of going to be a little vacation, but I'm hoping they let me out Thursday because I can't stay beyond like that without Wi-Fi in the hospital. So
wow, there's no Wi-Fi in your hospital?
No, it's bizarre too. I mean, it's not like a little tiny town, tiny hospital. And she's like, so we don't have Wi-Fi. I'm like, what? Like that was like my biggest issue. She's like, I know. And some people are here are like more than a week or 2 weeks. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be using data.
Man, nobody goes anywhere with, I mean, there's restaurants that have Wi-Fi now. I mean, you go to your Burger King and they'll have Wi-Fi. People can't stay off their damn mobile phones long enough and they don't want to use up their data. Oh, wow. I can't believe it. I mean, even the hospital here, if I'm within like 2 blocks of the hospital, which unfortunately I'm 3 blocks away, but if I'm within 2 blocks, I can get the hospital Wi-Fi.
Yeah, no Wi-Fi. So I'm like, they need to let me out by Thursday. Like they just need to. I'll like bust out.
Oh, wow.
Can't do it.
Well, today is September 11th. And of course, we all know what happened this day 16 years ago. That tragic event where hundreds of people lost their lives in the towers when the towers came down. And to all the people in New York City who are still to this day affected by the actions those people took when they flew those planes into those towers. Our hearts go out to you, and there's nothing that can be said to show you how much we feel for you.
Yeah, I can't believe it's 16 years.
Yeah, it's crazy. But the thing is we can all still go right back to that place where we were that day. Everybody can. It doesn't matter where you're from. We can all still go back to that spot.
Yeah. Yeah, crazy. I remember getting up, turning on the TV. My son was, I don't know, 6 months old or something. And I had him and I was going to feed him a bottle, and I sat down, turned on the TV, and one tower had already been hit and it was smoking, and they're talking, and I'm like not really understanding what's going on. I remember watching the screen and seeing that second plane come along, and it was just so surreal. Like my brain was confused as to what's going on? Like, what am I seeing? And then it hit, and it was just, oh, yeah, I'll never forget. I know where I was living. One of those things, like everybody, those major events, and you remember what you were doing. And there's a lot of those in what we're going to talk about today, too.
Oh, definitely. And very rarely do we have such an event that defines a generation like this. And people like you and I, we've actually gone through 3 events that kind of define our generation. And when I say that, we'll kind of get into it in our conversation later on, but going into where I was that day, September 11th, I remember it just as clear as a bell, like it was yesterday. I was sitting in a tin hut, big old warehouse in Camp Doha, Kuwait, sitting there with my buddies playing a little bit of Madden on and next thing I know, a soldier comes in from the day room and says, "Hey, we just got attacked." Actually, he said, "We just got bombed." So because we didn't really know exactly what was going on yet. And then, of course, everybody rushes into the day room and we gather around this plasma TV. Or it wasn't a plasma TV. I think it was like one of those big rear projection televisions. And we've got 129 soldiers standing around this one television as we see that second plane hit. And I remember looking over at my buddy, Specialist Jermaine Dubrow, and I said, "Man, shit just got real." And he goes, "Hey, that ain't no joke." And then right then and there, Captain Griebel comes walking in the day room. He's like, "Third platoon, get your shit ready. You guys are on QRF." And that was like right then and there. When I said shit just got real, shit really just got real, because we ended up within 3 hours of that happening, we ended up on a plane going over to Qatar to be quick reaction force to link up with the Navy SEAL team.
Wow.
Within an hour after that, this is middle of the night now, or this is getting close to middle of the night now, where we were at, and we were working up a plan to help them slip out under the cover of darkness and us take their place so it didn't look like anything was going on. So with all that happening, there's so much that's going on. There's so many untold stories about what happened that day. People want to right away start pointing fingers like, "Hey, we didn't do anything. We just sat back and let it all happen." People don't realize there are so many stories just like mine where things were already happening minutes after that first plane hit, but we don't see those things. So
No.
with that, I can still remember the smells. I can still remember the sights. The sounds, everything. And those things still to this day turn up in my dreams. And, it's things like that just make me just realize that each and every person has their own unique story. And it's that reason that those unique stories are the reason why we come out here and we do the things that we do. And, today, like I said earlier, we've had 3 major events that have happened to us within our generation. And I can't wait to get started on that. What do you think?
Oh yeah. Like so much stuff going through it as I was preparing for the show. I'm like, "Oh yeah. Oh yeah." And then you start remembering again some things, like I remember where I was, and it's and what's interesting is my son, who's 16, thinks the 80s were great. I mean, he was born in 2001. And one of my nephews too, he just the music of the 80s, and there's a lot of people that are still like there's just something about the 80s, and I don't know. No, it can't be the age group, because my son is 16, my nephew is twice that age. So, but there's just something about the 80s. It was a very pivotal decade.
Well, you remember back when we were kids, how it was cool to go to school dances and they would have like 50s themes, sock hops and stuff like that. Well, the 80s are their 50s theme. That's where we're at. The 80s are now the 50s. It's crazy.
I know. Do you feel old or what? Like, oh my God.
I don't know if I feel old so much as I feel nostalgic. I guess that's the word I would like to use. I feel nostalgic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I still think the 90s were like 10 years ago, right? Like that's
They were, weren't they?
like, yeah, you think about 90s, they were just like right there. But
Yeah.
It's bizarre. It's bizarre. Yeah. So let's like run through these, and then because I got a few stories that go with some of these little buggers.
If you're out there right now watching, please do us a quick favor and hit that share button. That's what I am doing right now. So please be patient with me, because my fingers, I got to hunt and peck a little bit to find the right words to put, put the right words together. So please hit that share button. We would love to have as many people come on and enjoy Grit and Grace as we remember the 80s today.
Oh, yeah, because we've all got some good memories of the 80s. I mean, there was a lot of things that happened. The 80s was the flashy, um, like over the top decade. It was the big hair, the shoulder pads, it was the flashy neon, it was the techno music, it was, excess. Like people spent money. Like that's where credit was so huge. Like people just spent money like crazy. Um, the Wall Street was really, really high starting in the beginning of um, the 80s, beginning of that decade. Like it was just like people were spending money, people were doing all kinds of stuff. It was like, it makes me think of Robin Leach. Remember that show he did?
Yeah.
Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
Famous, right.
Yeah.
That show was one of my favorite shows growing up. And I think because of shows like that, that's the reason why you get a lot of people in our generation now who try to use the Bentleys and the Lamborghinis and all that kind of stuff in their marketing campaigns. Possibly.
Yeah. So, you'd watch it and it was like, wow, look at them. Like we hadn't seen that before, but now we were seeing it because television, that was showing up, and it was just a decade of excess. And yeah, that show, I loved watching that show. Loved it.
Well, you remember
I think Trump was on it too.
You remember the movie Wall Street, right?
Yeah.
That, that was that to me kind of defined what I thought of the 80s back in, like, mainly on the East Coast, New York. It seemed like everybody was a Wall Street tycoon. You had all these guys making so much money in the stock markets. It seemed like that was the way to go. And that when I was a kid, that's what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be that Wall Street tycoon.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's the things that we saw, though. I remember my dad coming home to me one day, and I could have been more than 11 or 12 years old. And he said, son, if you're going to make it in this world, you're going to have to be an investor. Put two and two together. Wall Street, investments. I got to go there. To this day, I've still never been to New York City, though.
Wow. Well, you may soon. You may soon.
Yeah.
So let's jump in and run through the things of 1980. Let's start it off.
So 1980, what do you got? What is your first thing on your list? Because I actually made a list too. It took me a while.
Did you?
Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna run through the bullet points that I have for that year, and then we can let's just talk about it. And if you're watching, like, let us know, like, what do you remember? So 1980, that's CNN launched and Fox News launched. Those were big because we'd always just had the three networks, right? So now we're diversifying. See, that's the thing about the 80s, right? Diversifying. Pac-Man, huge game. Freaking hell, everybody played Pac-Man. And who didn't have a Rubik's Cube that they got for Christmas?
I think Pac-Man was that game that turned that. I think that game started the gamer generation. I mean, gamer phenomenon.
Yeah.
I remember spending so much money at the bowling alley because in the 1980s, the bowling alley downtown from where we lived, they had three games. They had Tank, Pac-Man, and then a pinball game. Nobody played the pinball game because nobody knew how to play pinball really that good. But Pac-Man, oh man, there was lines for hours waiting for people to get off the machine so you could plunk your dang quarters in there.
I know. It was crazy. Big thing I remember, another thing in 1980, Mount St. Helens erupted, which is not far from where I am in Washington State. We had an covering of ash all over everything. So that had to travel up and across the water for us. That was a big thing. And then John Lennon being assassinated.
Yeah.
Started off, that was a sad thing.
And I noticed that you missed one of the most important things in 1980. Probably the most
What?
important thing of all time in 1980. Miracle on Ice. United States beats Russia, goes on to beat Finland for the gold medal in the 1980 Olympics. I can't believe you forgot that one.
Well, I'm not a sports gal, remember?
But but it was that whole, I know Canada took sixth that year, and it's like the one time they
That's
ever
right.
played in the top
Just
five
trying to.
or top three.
That's right. I'm just trying to forget it.
Painful memories. Painful
Yes.
memories.
That's
Anyways,
right.
so 1980, you pretty much hit everything that I had, except for, of course, the USA wins the gold. But yeah, I'll forgive that one. And let's move. I got 1981 list, if you don't mind.
Okay, let's go. Let's give her.
All right, so 1981, I've got IBM launches the IBM PC to the public. Now that is huge because I remember my mom bringing one home because she decided that she wanted to be a computer programmer.
Oh, wow.
She spent $3,500 to buy a PC and enrolled in a community college to learn how to code. That stuck out to me because when I saw this on there, I was like, oh my God, I've got a personal story for that.
Well, I've got one too.
All right.
My hubby worked for IBM and did computer programming.
Well, there you go. He kind of
He hated it.
Well, I think everybody hated IBM. I know Apple hated IBM so much that they literally stole the design for the mouse from them. That's how bad they hated.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, you didn't know that?
No.
You need to catch up on some of your movie watching now. I think it was Pirates of Silicon Valley where I first heard that rumor. I don't know if it's true or not. And then there was another movie that came out that I can't remember the name of the movie, but I think it was Jobs or something like that.
Yeah.
And they had it in there as well, where he went to IBM to try to sell him on something. He saw this device, they were clicking around. And he said, we need that. And they went out and made their own.
Yeah. That was a good movie. That's right. I remember that. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Okay. So I'll give you a sports fact from 1981.
All right.
Baseball players go on strike.
Yes, they sure did. I remember that too. Only because my dad wouldn't stop bitching about it. 1981, I was 7 years old. I was playing Little League. I could care less about what was going on in the MLB, but my dad sure did, and that's all he did is talked about. I wish those guys would go out strike, blah, blah, blah. Football wasn't as big. Football wasn't as big in 1981 as it is now, so baseball was still king. That was the king of sports.
And Facebook. Football dominates now.
Definitely.
So,
Facebook
81
dominates also because I think there's probably more people catching the scores on Facebook this year than there is people actually watching the games.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. 81 was big for assassination attempts. Ronald Reagan, I remember that one. Pope John Paul, can't say that I remember that. The royal wedding happened. I do remember that. I do remember watching that thinking, holy crap, I can't believe how long her train is. And just how regal everything was. And empty. You don't remember that? Yeah, I remember the royal wedding. It was such a big deal here because we're tied to them, right?
Sure, I get that.
And MTV launched.
Yes, video killed the radio star by the Bugles, led us into the music video generation. And I always thought that it was I want my MTV. I honestly believe that that was the first video, and everything I kept looking up kept saying video killed the radio star. So I guess, we live and we learn.
And you remember the very first VJ? Oh, what was her name? She was like really cool. She had a really raspy voice. She
I
was so
don't,
famous. Oh, I can't remember her name. Damn. But they only had a rotation of about 15 videos, and that's what they rotated day and night because they just didn't have videos. People weren't making videos. I mean, that was such a new, it's like they launched before bands and musicians were even making videos.
well, it was kind of like, it's kind of like where we're at right now with the internet, with live video and stuff like that. When they started making music videos, every single video production company on the planet came out and said, I can make a music video. And there were some horrible music videos at first. And it's like I said, it's like right where we're at right now with Facebook Live and stuff like that. So it's almost like a history repeating itself. And the same goes for here. There are some really terrible Facebook Lives, but if we stay after it, if we stick with it, 1981 to now, they've made some. Now you don't see a whole lot of music videos on there anymore, and that's pretty sad. But who knows where we'll be in 40 some odd years.
Yeah, totally. Well,
hopefully I won't be doing Facebook Lives because it would be too damn old to do it, but whatever.
No, you got to keep doing the same things as long as you're alive. Keep doing it.
Oh no. I said this from the beginning. I've got a face for radio and I've got a voice for blogging. At 80 years old, I'm pretty sure there's no way anybody is going to be wanting to watch me live on this. Maybe I'll pull the Paul Harvey route and just go straight radio. I don't know, but I sure won't go on. Larry King has got a lot of courage to be able to get on the TV still.
Oh my God. Okay, you ready for 82?
Yes, let's do 82.
Well, 82 wasn't as busy as the other years.
No.
But the big thing, which kind of played into, so that was Michael Jackson's Thriller came out. Now that was epic because it was like a mini movie. No video had been produced like that ever. I mean, that was huge. That was the big thing. I remember seeing that and just being blown away. And I was a huge Michael Jackson fan. So
Jackson fan back then, though.
Oh, I don't think everybody. I think he had haters. Everybody has haters, but
they're that big.
My best friend at the time and I put together. So we entered into the school talent show, and we did a choreograph to Thriller, and so we did it in the school talent show, and we did all the fancy moves because we were both dancers. We did the fancy moves that Michael Jackson did. And people to this day still, if we get together, like a few of us, and that happened this year too, this summer. We had a reunion, like our French immersion people, because I was in French immersion all through school up until graduation. So we had a little reunion this summer, and someone brought it up. Hey, why don't you guys do the Thriller dance? Like 30 years later, when we did it, everybody was just like, woo! It was like so awesome. We studied that freaking Thriller video for hours and hours.
That's funny you say that because I did almost the exact same thing, only with Beat It. I had
clean version.
Yeah, the clean version, of course, because that's all they were playing on TV. But I studied that thing over and over and over. And at some point, there's like a silent film. My mom used to have one of those 8mm silent recorders.
Yeah.
And she recorded me watching the television, just step by step, in step with Michael Jackson, going through the whole song.
Oh my God!
You couldn't hear the music, but you could see the television. You could see me doing the dancing, and it was crazy. It was funny. I wish
Oh my God.
you'll find that. That would be something to definitely put up on to get digitized and put up here on Facebook.
I cannot believe we both have a freaking
Michael
Michael
Jackson.
Jackson dance story.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
I wasn't a fan of Thriller. I was more of a fan of Beat It. It had more of my type of tempo to it. Thriller was just too damn scary.
It was kind of freaky, though, some of those people. Those
Oh,
dead people. That's kind of freaky.
30 years.
You got anything else?
30? No, not in 1980. 1982 was a pretty bum year. It was just nothing really happened. It was, I guess, well, no, there's 1980. No, that was 83. I'm sorry. Let's go. Let's move on.
Okay, 83.
1983, Sally Ride, first woman goes to space.
Ride, Sally, ride.
Do you
That's
remember?
good tune.
Do you remember which space shuttle she went up in?
No, God.
Inaugural flight of the Challenger.
Oh.
Columbia went up in 1980 for the first space shuttle launch. And then in 1982 or 83, Challenger was put out, and that was the inaugural ride of the Challenger, which we're going to get into what happened to the Challenger coming up here in the next couple of years.
Yeah. So the other big thing, do you remember this? I don't know. Did you watch MASH? The final episode of MASH?
I did not watch the final episode of MASH until last year.
Really?
Yeah. And I watched MASH religiously on reruns, of course, and syndication every single night before I went to bed all through my high school years. And I never had seen the first episode of MASH nor the last episode of MASH until last year.
Well, the first episode, wow, that was really different. That show really evolved. I introduced my son to that show, and he loves that show. But that last episode was like so sad.
Yeah. Yeah, with them going crazy and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that was a pretty sad episode.
That was huge. That was a huge thing for that, yeah.
But
and
anybody could have pulled that off except for Alan Alda.
He's brilliant.
Absolutely. Absolutely
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah. And my grade 7 teacher, oh my God, he loved MASH. If he could bring up an example in teaching us, he freaking always talked about MASH. Always, always, always. Oh God, yes. He always talked about MASH. And, but you know what I liked? I think why it's a classic is the writing. Like that, you could watch it today and the writing still, it's still relevant. It's still witty. It still grabs you. It's brilliant at tackling tough topics and then just regular what you go through as a human. Like the writing is brilliant.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, that was crazy. I've never seen this before from Facebook, and so I jumped over to Facebook because I wanted to see who was joining us. And Anthony Hayes, thank you very much for coming on board with us. And you're absolutely right. The TV shows Knight Rider and Airwolf were amazing 1980s action television. And Scott Jones, thank you for joining us as well. We appreciate you. And if you are sitting here watching, throw a 1 or something in the comments. That way we know who you are and we can say thank you. We are talking about the 80s. We're remembering the 80s as it happened chronologically, and we're throwing in our own little personal stories from time to time along the way. So thank you for joining us. And if you would, please share this out because we want you to be able to share your experiences with your friends and with us as well. So, 1984.
Hey, wait, 1983. What? Can't miss the big thing that freaking happened. And they've made a comeback. Is Cabbage Patch Dolls?
Oh, come on! No, not
That
those.
was a big thing.
Cabbage
They
Patch
have
Dolls
made.
have come and gone over and over and over. You know what? I don't think any Cabbage Patch. I used to use my daughter, or my sister's Cabbage Patch Dolls as target practice for my GI Joes. You know, they just looked like big, dumb, big-headed sissy dolls. And so yeah, I remember those
Yeah.
cabbage things. But do you remember Garbage Pail Kids?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah,
yes. Ugh.
that was pretty awesome. But
Crazy toys they had.
launching right along with Cabbage Patch Kids, they couldn't leave the boys out. Remember what that was? He launched the exact same
Uh,
year, about a month later, right before Christmas. It just didn't take off as well.
I don't know.
My buddy, wherever I go, he goes, my buddy, my buddy, my buddy and me. You don't remember my
Oh
buddy?
my. Yes, I do. Oh my God.
The doll that spurred on a culture of frightened children all over the world as soon as the good guy doll thing kind of came out with Child's Play. Yeah, my buddy dolls. You have to remember that they came out right after Cabbage Patch as a direct competitor.
Yeah, well, they didn't do as well.
No, they
I
didn't.
think there was a lot of concern about boys having dolls.
Yeah, it just wasn't a big thing back then.
No, it still isn't actually. There's still like, it still somewhat is, which is sad all these years later. But yeah, I remember that. You sang that very well.
I thought so too. I
I could
think that's.
totally recognize and remember.
I am definitely going to go on The Voice, and that is going to be my audition song. Blake Shelton, you better be ready for me. I'm coming for you, brother. But anyways, moving on to 1984 and getting through my flush state. You know what came out in 1984?
Oh, 84 was big in my life. 84 was the year in my life that I remember out of all of the 80s.
Wow, really?
Yes. Oh, yeah. So much happened to me in 84.
Okay, so I've only got one thing in 1984.
Oh, shit.
I'll go first and then you can finish it off.
Okay.
So in 1984, Sony released its first pressed disc. Its first music disc was pressed in 1984 in America. That's all I
Really?
got. Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Wow. Huh. Wow. Huh. No, I didn't have that.
And I do have one
84.
more tip. Or not tip, I guess. There's one more thing. Before it was RSS, there was a program that was put out that actually was the forerunner to RSS, real simple syndication. And it allowed people to share audio files across a network. And that was released in 1984 as well, or developed in 1984 as well. So podcasting has its direct roots, at least the RSS part has its direct roots in 1984.
Wow. Huh.
There's some useless
I didn't-
knowledge.
I thought that was, like the last 10, 12 years. Wow.
Yeah.
Boy,
Anyway.
the shit I'm learning today. Well, 1984, come on. That is the year Purple Rain came out.
Oh,
That
right.
was-
I should have known. I should have known.
That, like, come on. Like, that was just, like, the best thing ever. And that was also 1984 was Michael Jackson did the moonwalk on the MTV Awards, which like everybody lost their freaking mind when he did that. I remember sitting there watching it and just like, oh my God. And then everywhere, everybody's trying to do the moonwalk.
Oh yeah.
Like that was the big thing. And I could do it. I could do it. But see, I was a dancer, so I don't know. I was kind of good at that. 1984, I lost my virginity in 1984.
That is
So
definitely something to remember.
like between Purple Rain and that, come on. Like 84 was a big freaking year.
That yeah, I can understand that. That would be a huge year. The whole thing. When I remember Purple Rain of all the movies growing up throughout the 80s, there's only three movies I remember in the 80s. One was Breakfast Club, the 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 other one being Wall Street, and the third one being Purple Rain. And Purple Rain probably influenced me more than any other movie, just for the simple fact that I saw him riding down that country road on that Honda Davidson. Okay, it was a Honda, but whatever. It was still a bike, and it was the coolest thing I ever seen in my life. And that
Yeah.
inspired me. I wanted a motorcycle from that day on.
A purple one.
I, I couldn't do
That was
purple.
custom made for him.
It
That was
was
custom made for him because he was
as
a
a
short guy.
as was everything in his life was custom made for him.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that was, yeah, well, that movie totally influenced me too. Like, that's why I lost my virginity that year.
Was it which song was it? Was it Purple Rain? Was it which song did you have playing in the background? I know there had to been a song.
Yeah, well, two, two,
Songs?
two, Darling Nikki and When Doves Cry.
Oh God, two of the best songs on the whole CD on that first track.
Oh,
CD, was a freaking 8-track almost.
there's some good guitar riffs on Computer Blue
Yeah.
and that. Oh, anyway, I could go on and on, but that was an epic year for sure.
So was it like lose your virginity, then sit and listen to music for the next two songs, or was it did it actually last for two songs? Inquiring minds need to know.
It lasted for quite a while, actually.
I don't know why that came out. What the hell? Thought I'd go with it. 1985. What the fuck happened that year?
Oh, what happened that year? Well, Back to the Future was a huge movie in the box office. That was another big movie of the 80s that people still talk about. And of course, the DeLorean. And so
Yeah,
that was a huge
I was that 1985 when that came out. I'm sitting here
85.
like going through all these notes because I've got a bunch of additional notes that I wrote. And I'm like, oh, okay, the Walkman, the brick cell phone, the Cosby Show, the Challenger. Oh, there it is. That wasn't yet, though.
Yeah,
That's
that was a big movie. And the other big thing that was huge was that's the year that We Are the World was recorded. God, I didn't think it was that long ago. We Are the World was recorded to feed to raise money for those starving in Africa.
Yep.
Prince was asked to record on that, but he didn't want to. He said he'd do his own song. So
Yeah, it was
he did his
written by Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson.
that was sort of the beginning of that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Collaborative.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you haven't seen the level of artists though. I was going through the artist list, and it surprised me to see some of the names that were on there. I didn't even realize were on there. And like Waylon Jennings, I had completely forgot Waylon Jennings was on that song. Hall and Oates, I remembered. I remembered Stevie Wonder, Cyndi Lauper, but there's some names I was just like, "Are you kidding me?" I didn't even realize they were on there.
Duran Duran, Boy George, Bonnie Tyler, Stevie Wonder. Yeah, it was huge. And they
So that was a pretty amazing. I remember watching it, sitting there in my sitting there with my family, and we're watching "We Are the World" being sung live on TV for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, and it still gets played, still
Yeah.
gets played lots. Yeah, that was sort of the beginning. There's been a lot of songs since then to raise money and artists getting together. That was like the first one. That's also the year that the Titanic wreckage was found, 1985. That was a big thing to discover. I remember seeing a little bit of that, and that them talking about it on TV. That was a huge thing. I'm surprised it took so long for a movie to be made after that was found.
Yeah. I think I don't understand how the movie rights thing work. There's a lot of I'm sure there's a
Yeah.
lot of things that happen that kind of cause, maybe a little bit of dragging going on and stuff like that. And then there's other things. I mean, 9/11 just got made this year, and it happened 16 years ago. You would have
Hmm.
thought that would have happened a whole lot sooner than it did, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yes. And then, Gorbachev became leader of the Soviet Union. So that was a busy year. A lot of
yeah,
stuff happened that year.
yeah,
Okay, so
and
1986.
1986, Martin Luther King Day becomes official in 1986.
Oh,
Yeah, I didn't know that. I thought there was always a Martin Luther King Day. I didn't realize that it was a newer holiday, I guess you would call it. So,
yeah.
and then of course what's something that I kind of been kind of letting slip out over and over and over. The Challenger explodes.
Yeah. That was that was bizarre. I remember seeing that and seeing it explode and thinking that's what's supposed to happen because I never really watched that before. I hadn't watched takeoffs and launches, and so I didn't know what the hell was supposed to happen. And I remember watching it on TV and it exploded and all these pieces flew off. And I thought, okay, well, that's what's supposed to happen. And then you've got the people that are announcing it. Then you're cluing in because they obviously knew more than I did that that's not what's supposed to happen. That was
So
so sad.
and it was the first time they had a civilian teacher on board. She was going, and her name was Krista McAuliffe, and she was going to be doing teaching and stuff like that from space. They were going to actually beam the classes from the space shuttle, and she was going to be a payload specialist, kind of go through her whole classes. And I remember it was my fifth grade year, and I remember the teacher from our science class saying that for the next, I think it was like 4 or 5 weeks, every I think it was Wednesday or Thursday or something like that, we were going to have a science class from space, and it was kind of a big deal for us. And we were sitting there watching the launch, and then boom, the thing goes just explodes. So the Challenger, it had the honor to take the first woman into space, and it also had, you know, uh,
Take one out of space.
yeah, well, before she got there, but it is what it is. That's one of the other defining moments in our generation, that we all saw this happen, and it's like, wow, you can still remember where you were that day that happened.
So, and I thought it was so sad because her class was so excited and her class was watching.
Right.
Like, oh, that must have been, what was that like as her class as a child? Like, that was
That
shocking. That was shocking.
that had to have been just surreal to
Especially
be
that you're little and that's your teacher and your teacher explodes. Like, that must have been brutal. That I thought that was so sad. That was so sad. Yeah, that was a big deal. Um, that is also the same year that the USSR launched the Mir space station. So a lot of space stuff happened that year.
I think the 80s were the last great decade of space, to be honest with you, because there was still that space race going on. Then you get into the 90s, and it's more or less cooperation. We started cooperating a whole lot more. But in the 1980s, it was still kind of a us and them type of thing.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, a lot sure happened as I was going through everything. I was like, holy cow, a lot of stuff happened in the, but again, it was that, the excessiveness, I think, of the 80s trying to, you know, do stuff. And you having a breakdown? Are you okay there?
No, I'm not okay here. I looked over on the Good and Great page, and the video is getting all kinds of wonky. So hopefully it straightens itself out. I'm gonna get off of that so I'm not watching it because that just totally threw me for a loop. That
Stresses you out?
yeah, it looked like we just exploded or something. I don't know. We don't need our people to think that we just went the way of the Challenger. So
Oh my
anyhow,
God. Okay. Hey, 86 big. That was a big year too because Oprah Winfrey launched her show and we all know what happened from that. She went on to do her show for 25 years. Huge following, eventually her own magazine, her own network. Um, that that was the beginning of
she became the woman who made herself. I mean, she is like the American dream come true.
yeah, like she household name, like that woman, whatever she set out to do, and launched a lot of other famous people. A Jan Van Zant, and You're Making Funny Faces, and Dr. Phil, and Dr. Oz. Like, what?
That's what I'm looking. That is what
Oh
I
my
see right
God.
now. So hey, folks, if you see me making some funny faces, that's the reason why I'm making funny faces. That is like may as well be a
Like,
camel spider because that thing is huge. Big old wolf
he,
spider.
he, he's liking the
Anyway,
heat there from the light.
yeah, he's gonna be dead after the
We're
show. I guarantee.
keep an eye on him
Anyways,
because I know what it's like to get bit.
yeah,
Yeah, and Chernobyl exploded. Like that was a big deal too. I remember hearing about that. I didn't understand too much. I mean, I'm a teenager. What the hell? I'm not I remember hearing about it, but not really paying too much attention to it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1986
87.
didn't have a whole lot. 87 I didn't have a whole lot. The research I was doing, that was kind of a boring year. The only thing I really remember is the Minnesota Twins won the World Series. Um, I know, not very exciting.
Oh, we're killing the spider now.
Yeah, I had to die. I couldn't started moving again. And yeah, the only thing that kept me from screaming like a little girl was the fact that I've got a live audience, and that's not cool. Nobody with a show called Raw and Real or Grit and Grace, or we shouldn't be screaming like little girls, but I was this close, really.
Oh my, that would be you and Bobby. Yeah.
I don't like spiders. I don't like spiders. Snakes I can
Yeah,
deal with,
no.
but spiders, no, can't do it.
Oh God, no. Can't do snakes. 87. I freaking graduated high school, and it's amazing I did because I skipped out the whole last 3 months. I hated school so bad. It's amazing I even had the grades to graduate, but 87 I remember because I graduated and I was free. Free at last.
Done, over.
That's
Not,
right.
you know,
And then what I
1987 would be that was the only thing I have from 1987 was a Mustang GT convertible, coolest car I ever owned in my entire life. So I love 1987 just for that reason alone.
cool. Was it purple?
No, it was white.
White? That's boring. Well, at least it was a good car though. And the other big thing I remember is 87. I remember that summer as a teen, it was like one of the big things to go to the movies in the summertime. That's where you'd see people. I mean, you couldn't go to the bar, right? So what did you do? You like hung out in the McDonald's parking lot, you cruised around town, you went to the movies. And Dirty Dancing was that summer that I graduated. I think I went 3 times to watch that movie. And Patrick Swayze was hot. And yeah, that was another good year, another memorable year.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen Patrick Swayze in person, and he didn't
You
look.
did?
Yeah, he did not look like the person you saw on television ever.
No.
No, he didn't. He was much
Kill
thinner.
the dream. Kill the dream.
No, I'm sorry, ladies. I'm sorry. Patrick Swayze did not look the same as he did in the movies, and makeup does great things for people. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah. Well,
But
the other movie
he
that I
wasn't
loved that
really-
he was in,
What's that? Roadhouse.
Roadhouse. Him and Sam Elliott. Oh my God, what a good movie that was.
Now Sam Elliott looks just like he does in the movies.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Love Sam Elliott.
I got to meet both Patrick Swayze and Sam Elliott 2 different times, 2 different reasons, but I did get to see them both and meet them both. Sam Elliott, one of the most amazing, genuinely nice guys you'll ever meet. Same way with Patrick Swayze. Very nice guy, very respectful guy to the military. Yeah, super cool dudes. But Sam Elliott, dude, he is like that. If you want to know what a freaking man is, if you want to know what the poster child for alpha male is, look up Sam Elliott. That's all you got. That's all I can say about that.
He's just got like the swagger and the voice and the voice. Like, oh my God, like the voice. Like, just that's all
Definitely.
Like, oh, yeah. And he does those commercials. He does voiceover for those commercials. It's like, oh my God, the guy is the best voice ever.
Yeah, he's definitely like I said, if you want to know a poster child for man in, perfect male, alpha male, look up Sam Elliott. His picture will be right there, and it'll have those. You remember those commercials, the most interesting man in the world, and they got the guy who says, "I don't always drink beer, but when I do, it's Dos Equis," whatever it is. I think they got it wrong. I just, that guy's kind of impressive. Don't get me wrong. I've seen his commercials. He's kind of impressive, but I don't think he can hold a candle to Sam Elliott. I just don't. But anyways, let's get off Sam Elliott.
Got a little bit of a crush on that Sam Elliott.
Hey, come on now.
Oh my God. Yeah, that was a good year.
No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, 1987, it was kind of a cool year. 1988, another, I kind of found that as a flat year. Didn't see a whole lot going on. Other than, was it George W. Bush? Or no, the older Bush. He was elected that year, right?
No, the year after.
Oh, 89?
In 89.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
88 was like 2 major plane crashes. The one over Scotland, that Pan Am flight over Scotland,
okay, yeah.
that was bombed, terrorist bombed, and the Iran air flight that was shot down by a U.S. Navy ship.
That's right.
So there was 2 big plane accidents so that's kind of a bummer, depressing. But the big thing was that's the year that the Phantom of the Opera debuted in New York City, was the most popular all that time up until 2014 when The Lion King. Like, that's a long ass run.
Wow. Yeah, especially for any any Broadway production that lasts that long, that can hang out at the top for that long. Wow, that you don't see that happening.
That's almost 30 years.
Yeah, Lion King didn't even make it that far. Because when Rent came out after Lion King, Rent took that top spot away from them relatively quickly. So
Hmm.
yeah, Phantom of the Opera. It's have you ever seen the Broadway production of that or the
No,
off production of it? It's
no,
pretty amazing.
pretty intense.
Yeah, I saw it in Minneapolis at a theater in Minneapolis, and that was pretty cool.
Hmm.
You know
Yeah, that's a long
where
one.
Prince used to live.
Yeah, I know. Fucker.
Anyways, we're coming up to the very end of the show, so let's get 1989 out of the way real quick, so we can tell everybody where the hell they can go to find us.
1989 is the older Bush. That's when he was inaugurated. The Berlin Wall came down. A lot of stuff happened. That's when hundreds of Chinese students were killed in Tiananmen Square. That was pretty brutal. I've just the image in my head. I remember seeing a big tank and a
Yeah,
lot of people on the ground.
got enough.
Um, ugh.
And that
And
thing that was one of the other moments that I was going to talk about as being one of those key moments in our lives. Seeing those types of things, the Berlin Wall coming down, the Tiananmen Square, student, um, what's the word I'm looking for here?
protest,
Protest. Yes, please.
protest.
Thank you. So, seeing these types of things, there are so many changes at the end of the 80s going into the 90s. Wow.
Yeah,
Our generation is truly the last generation of people who really found out our news through television, not through the internet.
yeah, yeah. And I think, the 80s was the first for a lot of things. And then things kind of followed along in the 90s and in the 2000s. And so many firsts happened in the 80s, like, the Exxon Valdez that ran ashore, huge oil spill, like things like that. And the major plane crashes and the protests at Tiananmen Square, like those types of things. We've seen those things since then, but the 80s were a pivotal decade. Like it was just, and then the very big thing, the last thing,
The last thing?
well, not the last thing, but the last thing I have,
What's the last thing you have?
I, where we are right now.
Internet radio? I don't know.
The internet,
Oh, the internet. I didn't think
the
that was until
world
1990.
wide.
I didn't think that was until 1980 or 94.
Well, that's what I thought, but a few resources that I came across. Tim Berners-Lee, a British scientist, invented the World Wide Web. Doesn't mean it came out,
You mean
invented
it
it.
wasn't Al Gore?
No.
Oh my God, Al Gore, you liar! sorry, that's an old joke.
I thought that was so perfect, thinking, oh my God. And so here we are now. The internet is such a huge, has reduced us from, was the 6 degrees of separation. We are 1 degree of separation now.
Oh, definitely. The
And
internet has literally taken this world from the size of an unimaginable sphere that you could never breach to literally something the size of a soccer ball that you can literally reach over and touch the people on the other side with, of the world. We have reduced the world to a mere Skype chat.
yeah, it's crazy. I know. It's amazing. I mean, look at you and I. You're in South Dakota. I'm up on the west coast of Canada. When I was with, co-owner of the radio station, we had producers that were in Serbia, and our operations director was in Nicaragua, and my partner was, on the east coast of the United States. I'm on the west. Like, I've had clients in Australia. I've had like all over North America. It's just unbelievable. The opportunity, especially for a business owner, used to be you opened a business and it was local. If you could get the word out outside of your community and you could ship, now it's unbelievable. You can get to know people well. You can partner with people. You can which doesn't always work out great, but sometimes it's unbelievably fantastic. So it's just unbelievable friendships that I've made that I never would have had. Things I've learned I never would have learned. Stories that I've heard, opportunities. Thank you, Tim Berners-Lee. That's all I got to say.
Definitely. Thank you very much. I would not have met an amazing person like you to be my cohort on Grit and Grace TV, and we would not have been able to build the audience that we have had the pleasure of building had it not been for you. So thank you very much, Lynn. I love the fact that we got to spend an hour together reminiscing about the 80s. You had some way cooler stories about the 80s than I sure did, especially that one about getting laid, but whatever. I guess I was a little bit later bloomer than you were. Not a big deal. So,
well, you're younger, a lot younger than me.
Well, just a little bit, not too much, just short, not that much younger. But anyhow, I had such a good time with all of you tonight. I have fun every time we come out here. So how do they get a hold of us, and how can they help us to reach more people?
Well, if you visit us on our website at gritandgracetv.com, you can find out all the ways that we're available. Maybe video isn't for you. Maybe you're an audio only kind of person. Well, you can get us on Stitcher, you can get us on Google Play, you can get us on Apple Podcasts. And exciting news, we are now going to be broadcast through SiriusXM, their streaming platform. So we are going to be available through Spoke. So we don't have that link for that yet. We haven't gotten in rotation yet. But if you go to our website, you'll see right on the homepage all the different ways that we're available. Our shows are rebroadcast Monday nights on milehighradio.com. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, and every time we upload a new show, you will be notified. And that goes with subscribing to Apple Podcast or Stitcher or anything else. Now, the big thing is that we want from you is we want questions, because we're going to be coming to you more than once a week. We're going to be coming to you 3 times a week. So if you have questions, if you have suggestions, we want to hear from you. And you can do that on our website. If you go again to gritandgracetv.com, you can click on the comment or question tab, that's what it's called, and you can anonymously ask us a question. Maybe it's about business, maybe it's about podcasting, maybe it's a personal question, maybe I can't see that. Send questions. Maybe it's something that you're struggling with personally or professionally, or you want to get into podcasting, or you need somebody to help you with something. We got people, both of us, CJ and I both know so many people all over, not just in North America where we live. We've got people all over. So if you have something that you need help with, a question that you have, whatever it is, you can ask that anonymously on our website. So, or you have a show suggestion, but we want to start doing Q&A shows regularly on Fridays. So send us your questions. No need to be shy. It's anonymous. That's it. That's all I got.
That's all we got. So what are you still doing here? Why are you still here? See you later. Bye. Thanks everybody for watching. We appreciate each and every one of you each and every week. When we come out here, we just like to have fun. And I know you like to have fun too. So please share, please join in, comment, leave your comments, leave your questions, challenge us a little bit, push our buttons a little bit, whatever it is. Keep us real, keep us authentic, because that's all we know how to be. Till next time, everybody. See you later.
Peace. Stay wild, everybody.